So, unlike most of my videos where I just read this completely blind, I was doing that in continuation of Chapter 3, where we left off with Miss Florence submitting to Dido. And it just got weird, and it was 8 minutes of me staring at this book and looking horrified. So, aside from the fact that it was fucking weird and I could not deliver it in a funny way, it didn't involve Roger, and that's kind of who I'm focusing on, because he's our protagonist after all. So, I'll just summarize this chapter, and we'll begin on chapter 4 after. Okay, so we had Dido and Miss Florence, and Dido was going to chastise Miss Florence. And all the while Roger is peeping through the keyhole, so he's part of this scene in a way, but not in a way that I personally give a fuck about. But in order to subjugate Miss Florence, they're involved a lot of splinting of limbs, tourniquets, syringes full of purple liquid meant to be put into the anus as a flogging takes place, and I guess it's like an enema and also sort of a color guide for what color the bruises should be. And if you can't get it to the color, that's the person who's getting flogged's fault. So she's getting an enema that is bright purple. Was not allowed to evacuate. Sprayed it all over the place. And then there was fisting involved, self-fisting even, which I thought was impressive. And then later on, Miss Florence has a device used upon her person that had a saddle, like clamps were put on the nipples for the reins, and there's like a butt plug and another end that's like stuck in there because it's flared at the top, and there's a tail attached to it, and Dido was like, oh, well, now that I've beaten the shit out of you, how about you take me for a ride? So the saddle was part of that equation, as well as at the end when Roger watches them leave the premises. She is also carrying a cart via her tail, and then the harness was... Oh, and she had one of those mouth things that held her mouth open and her tongue over... It's whatever. So, yes, Dido was like, how about 2 laps around the entire house, the entire property, and then I'm gonna dump you in the lake at like 4 in the morning. I mean, this is an all-day affair, it seems like. I mean, it's not just sex. It's... What are you doing?
Recording.
Why? I'm already recording myself. My husband is recording me from the couch on his phone. I guess he just wants to get a different angle. He just thinks I'm so amazing.
What about this contraption?
The contraption. Yeah, there was, like I said, a saddle on top.
Yeah, in 1918, this shit just
In
readily
1918,
available.
you know, put the battery things on your car, and
Yeah, all available in 1918.
all available.
All there, yeah.
I'm at a loss, and I couldn't bring myself to read an entire chapter in horrified confusion. Like, there was no tone change. It was at 11 the entire time. So, at the end, I'll read the end, because Roger starts to do something weird. So, as they're marching away on Miss Florence's hands and knees, pulling a cart, having a saddle attached to her, Roger rushes over to the room because he saw these sweaty, quim juice covered, anal bud emissions soaked panties and stockings and stuff. And so he decides to put some of it on. And he knows how to put everything on correctly. You know, the garter belts, the stockings, the shoes. Oh, he loved how fucked up the shoes were. As he put them, they were deliciously small and painful. And then he gets a pair of her panties. And, he says, I kissed the place where her quim and bumhole had touched, and slipped them over my stockings. I pulled the lovely pink panties tight over my balls and throbbing cock, very high, in order to encompass the whole of my organ. At last, with the silk stretched painfully, I managed to get my cock covered, with the thong biting into my furrow. I was fully encased in my mistress's beauty. My balls and cock felt godlike, so tightly and painfully sheathed in my goddess's panties. I thought my penis should be a rock forever. I could not bear the thought of having to remove them. So, when he hears the duo returning from their jaunt around the manor, he leaves and still has the panties. So it begins an investigation. And here, finally, in chapter 4, we get a taste of grub. Literally, figuratively, and half and half. So, I'll pick that up in the next video, but chapter 4 is called Wringing Wet. I wonder what that could be in reference to.